Roger Mason, Managing Director of Antipa. Thank you very much. You've come to Melbourne. You're going to be talking at Lions AGM this afternoon, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you to our shareholders who'll come along and let them hear a bit about the Antipa story. What I wanted to do today was just record a bit of a snapshot of Antipa so that we can tell the world about it. We invested in your company where you had early economics. I think it was a 2022 scoping study was in place, and that told us that you had a really interesting project. There was some fabulous economics at that stage. I think we've moved on a fair way from there, and some of the things that we look at is there a developable project? Is there a capable team? And what are the options around that? Now, a lot of people think of Paterson and think remote area, but you're actually not too far from Telfer, which is a very well developed project, and so it takes care of all the accessibility issues to my mind. So ticked all of those boxes. But let's start with, what have you got out there, Roger, in the desert? What sort of resource size in terms of metal and what grade?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to catch up, Hedley. Always a pleasure. So our Minyari project, which is about 40 k's north of Telfer, hosts a resource of 2.5 million ounces of gold at 1.5 grams per tonne. There's 84,000 tonnes of copper at about 0.2%, and then there's some cobalt and some silver as well in amongst that resource. It's all basically at Minyari, the Minyari Dome area, but there are a couple of small satellite opportunities as well, about 30 k's away or less.
Yep.
So that's the asset that we're completing the pre-feasibility study on.
So last time you put out economics, I think it was in October 2024, the gold price in between then and now has gone astronomically. I think it was about 2,600 in US dollar terms when you had your last set of economics. It's over $4,000 an ounce US now. I imagine that could change a few things, but how do you see the project scope and attractiveness changing in that time? Clearly, I think the value will have gone up, so I can say that bit, but you tell me how you see it adjusting.
Well, it's hard to believe that we did the 2024 October scoping study. The base case was 3,000 Australian dollars an ounce, and at that point in time, we took our sensitivities out to 5,000 Australian dollars an ounce. So even that's well behind the eight ball. At this stage, we haven't landed on the consensus metal pricing for the PFS, but we're contemplating it'll be somewhere between 3,500 Australian to maybe 3,800 Australian dollars an ounce on the gold. Obviously, the copper's gone up and silver as well. So, I mean, if you just look at the fact for the 3,000 Australian dollar base case, our post-tax MPV at 7% was $600 million, and the internal rate of return post-tax was 46%. And we paid off a bit over $300 million of capital in 2 years. Now, you can stretch out to wherever you would like, but even if you take just 4,000 Australian dollars an ounce, which is conservative, I would think, the post-tax MPV at 7 was 1.2 billion Australian dollars, and the internal rate of return post-tax was 79%. And the capital was paid off in about 15 months. So we would presume that gold price leverage will feature, in the PFS, obviously. And there's been some, a minor escalation in, capital costs, etc., but they'll be far outweighed by, potentially 50 to 60% increase in the metal prices.
Yeah, it's exciting to think that you're getting to the point where you can start to talk about development as opposed to just waving your arms around and saying maybe we will. The producers at the moment are netting margins which are amazing and piling up cash on their balance sheets. And you're the scale of project which could pile up an awful lot of cash. So I imagine it's going to have a very attractive valuation. But Minyari is kind of the jewel in the crown. You sit on an enormous ground position, and that is rare in Western Australia. It's difficult to get ground in WA in good areas, and here you are with over 4,000 k's square. So this part of the world has been the locus of some of the most exciting discoveries, I think, in the last, let's say, 20 years. I mean, you've seen Rio find Winu, which are kind of your northwestern neighbour. You've had Greatland, which are your immediate neighbour, finding Havieron, which sort of went into JV with Newcrest and then Newmont, and now they've got all of it. And then there's your Minyari as well. These are all large projects in the context of what's been found. So how does your 4,000 square k's fit in? How prospective is it? Just wave your arms for a little while about the growth that you could have.
Oh, look, it's highly prospective. Antipa moved into that province in 2011, and it was very much an unloved region. yet it had, 2 tier 1 or giant deposits in the case of Telfer, pre-mining over 30 million ounces of gold, million tonnes of copper, and Nifty, which is probably circa 2.5 million tonne pre-mining copper deposit. But that was about it. Everything else was underexplored, grossly underexplored in fact, and had just been sitting there as a bit of a sleeping giant. And you're right, Hedley, it's only about 10 years, there's been 20 million ounces of gold discovered, 3.4 million tonnes of copper and 60 million ounces of silver, right? And those have all been undercover. Varying depths. Minyari, we discovered 10 metres of sand and then up to 400 odd metres of cover in the case of Hedley.
Yeah.
Our project area, the 4,000 square Ks that you talk about, because we had that first mover advantage, 14, 15 years ago, we focused on the shallowly covered part of that prospective geology. So it's a little bit like your tabletop here. Our ground sits on top of the table. Average cover depth is 20 metres or thereabouts for probably half the project. But then a lot of the people that came in subsequent to the discoveries all sit out in very deep cover, 1 to several kilometres of cover.
Yep.
In terms of how we go about it now, we're in the fortunate position as of about March this year where we reconsolidated that package. Previously we had 2 majors farming in. Their exploration progress was pretty slow, to put it politely. So what Antipa did was cash up in June this year to our balance sheet in a very strong position, to the extent that at the end of the last quarter we've still got over $60 million in cash. And what that allows us to do is continue with the de-risking of Minyari. It's a 10-year project, 130,000 ounces per annum, but allows us to do resource growth work, so extending the resources, and also discovery-focused exploration. This year we focused very much on specific target testing for the discovery focus because a lot of targets had been left sitting unattended to by the partners who are both now gone. We'll continue that process next year, but we can also become a lot more systematic where we start doing regional air core programs on specific grid spacings to really start to pick up new positions within that broader portfolio. Current focus remains satellite positions to Minyari. So, 40 to 50 Ks out is our primary focus. But, over time we can start looking for things farther afield as well.
And you said that you topped up your balance sheet and made that stronger. I've seen you talk about yourselves as being very strongly funded. What exactly does that mean in terms of how far that funding could take you? It sounds like you're not going to have to be drilling for a set of results, coming back to the market, drilling for another set of results, coming back to the market. That's what you mean by strong, but how far does it take you?
Yeah, good question, Hedley. So that balance sheet will get us out to completion of a definitive feasibility study. So we're targeting completion of the PFS around August next year. And then depending on the outcomes from that, we move into the DFS. And so our funding will carry us through to beyond that point, but it includes the discretional work we did this year, which was substantial. And then we'll do a similar amount of discretional, as in exploration, drilling next calendar year, probably around 50 to 70,000 metres, in fact, of that type of drilling.
Must be tremendous to be able to engage yourself in the technical work without having to worry about raising that money in the near term. So, and I've got to say, 2026 looks tremendously exciting. You've got PFS news, you've got all those drill rigs spinning. There's so much going on in that part of the world as well, and you're right in the thick of it. So we're exceptionally happy shareholders. We've had a great return so far. But when we look at valuation versus price, Antipa is still one of the ones which is very significantly discounted from what we think it should be worth. So we love being shareholders. It's tremendous working with you and Mark, and really appreciate you coming to Melbourne to talk to us and our shareholders. Good on you, Roger.
No problems. Thanks for your support, Hedley.
Pleasure, mate. All the best.
Cheers.